At 6:12 on Monday morning, Rochelle Avery stood outside the locked study with a funeral program folded inside her apron. "Please, Miss Whitlock," she said. "I only need today." Across the desk, billionaire Nolan Whitlock's fiancée, Camille Hart, did not look up from her tablet. "The memorial lunch begins at noon. We have 80 guests. My mother's funeral begins at 11. Camille finally raised her eyes. Rochelle was a 34-year-old black maid who had worked at Whitlock House for 4 years. Her dark brown face looked exhausted, but her uniform was pressed, her shoes polished, and her voice steady. Camille tapped the schedule. "You requested Friday afternoon off. To identify her body. And now you want Monday too? To bury her." Camille leaned back. "People die, Rochelle. Houses still have to run. Before this day reveals why Rochelle's mother died carrying a secret connected to this mansion, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are watching from." Rochelle swallowed. "I have never missed a shift. That is why I employ you." Nolan approved bereavement leave in the staff handbook. "Nolan is in Chicago. I manage the house." Camille slid a silver serving list across the desk. "If you leave, I will record it as job abandonment. You will lose your final wages, your health coverage, and the reference you need for your apartment application." Rochelle's younger brother lived with her and depended on the medication covered by that insurance. Camille knew it. "You checked my housing file? I check everything that can become inconvenient." Rochelle looked at the clock. The first train to St. Mark's Cemetery left in 48 minutes. Camille smiled. "Choose carefully. Your dead mother cannot be evicted." Rochelle folded the funeral program smaller and returned it to her apron. "What do you need served?" By 11, guests filled the sunlit conservatory for a charity luncheon celebrating Camille's new domestic worker scholarship fund. Rochelle carried trays past banners promising dignity, opportunity, and fair employment while her mother's coffin waited 6 miles away. No one noticed her hands shaking. No one except Nolan Whitlock. He entered through the garden doors without warning, still carrying his overnight bag. Camille crossed the room quickly. "You were not due back until tonight." The meeting ended early. She kissed his cheek and turned him toward the donors. Rochelle lowered her face and continued serving. Nolan watched her pass. "Rochelle." She stopped. "What happened?" "Nothing, sir." His attention moved to the black ribbon pinned beneath her apron strap. Camille answered before she could. "Her mother passed away." Rochelle insisted on working. She said she needed the hours. Rochelle looked at her. Camille's smile never changed. Nolan's expression softened. "I'm sorry. You should be with your family. The schedule was already arranged. I can arrange another schedule." Camille touched his arm. The service was private. It already happened this morning. Rochelle felt the folded program against her ribs. The funeral had not started yet. A donor asked Nolan about the scholarship, pulling his attention away. Camille stepped close to Rochelle. "One contradiction," she whispered, "and your brother loses his medicine by sunset." Rochelle carried the next tray into the library. There, she finally allowed herself to breathe. Her mother, Denise Avery, had cleaned offices at Whitlock Medical for 18 years. 3 days before her sudden death, she had left Rochelle a voicemail. "Do not trust the woman who smiles during the photographs. I found the list they buried." Rochelle had assumed grief made the message sound stranger than it was. Then she found a Whitlock House visitor badge inside her mother's coat pocket. It was dated the night before Denise died. Camille entered the library and closed the door. "You still have the program." Rochelle's hand moved instinctively toward her apron. "Give it to me." "Why?" "Because black paper on a white uniform makes donors uncomfortable." "It is not black paper. It is my mother's funeral program." Camille held out her hand. Rochelle did not move. Camille grabbed the edge of her apron. The program fell onto the carpet. A photograph slid from between its pages. Nolan stood beside Denise Avery outside Whitlock Medical 12 years earlier. Between them was a young woman in a hospital gown. Camille went still. Rochelle picked it up. "You know her?" "No." You looked at her before you looked at Nolan. Camille snatched the photograph. The library door opened. Nolan stood there. His gaze moved from Camille's hand to the funeral program on the floor. He bent and picked it up. Across the cover were the words, "In loving memory of Denise Avery service, Monday 11 a.m. The clock above the fireplace read 11:07. Nolan looked at Rochelle. Her funeral is happening now? She could not answer without risking everything Camille had threatened. Camille stepped forward. There has been confusion. Nolan opened the program. Inside, beneath Denise's photograph, someone had handwritten a message in blue ink. Nolan Whitlock, ask Camille why your sister's name is on my death certificate. The room became completely silent. Nolan read it twice. My sister died 20 years ago. Rochelle looked at the photograph Camille was trying to hide. The young woman between Nolan and Denise had the same eyes as him. Camille backed toward the fireplace. Nolan held out his hand. Give me that picture. Instead, Camille dropped it into the flames. Rochelle moved first. She reached through the heat with the silver serving tongs and pulled it out before the fire consumed the woman's face. On the back, Denise had written one date and one location. Tonight, room 418, Whitlock Medical. Then the conservatory doors slammed shut, every phone in the mansion lost signal, and Camille quietly locked the library from the inside. Nolan moved between them. Open the door. Camille's smile vanished. From the corridor came the slow scrape of a cart, followed by a woman's voice Rochelle recognized from her mother's final voicemail. You should have gone to the funeral, Camille told Rochelle. Now you may join her. The scraping stopped outside the library door. Then a woman said, Nolan, do not let Camille take Rochelle downstairs. Rochelle knew the voice. It had been faint behind her mother's final voicemail, speaking just before the message ended. Camille's face tightened. Nolan moved toward the door. Who is out there? No one you need to trust, Camille said. She pressed a switch beneath the bookshelf. The fireplace flared higher, and smoke began feeding into the room through a vent. Rochelle grabbed the funeral program and covered her mouth. Nolan seized the brass poker and struck the lock. Once. Twice. On the third blow, the door opened. A hospital transport cart stood in the corridor. Beside it was a thin woman in blue scrubs, her silver hair pulled beneath a surgical cap. Rochelle recognized her from the half-burned photograph. Nolan stopped. Helena. The woman looked at him. You still call me that? His supposedly dead sister stepped forward and touched his face. Camille backed away. Nolan stared at Helena as if the house had vanished around them. We buried you. You buried a sealed coffin. Father identified the body. Your father signed whatever Camille's family placed in front of him. Helena looked at Rochelle. Denise kept me alive. Rochelle's anger cut through her shock. Then why did my mother die? Helena lowered her eyes. Because she tried to bring me out. Staff and guests were gathering at the far end of the corridor. Camille immediately lifted her voice. This woman is a psychiatric patient. Rochelle brought her here to blackmail Nolan. Helena pulled back her sleeve. A faded patient number had been tattooed near her wrist. Room 418, she said. Whitlock Medical. Ask who authorized 20 years of private confinement. Nolan turned to Camille. She did not answer. Rochelle unfolded the funeral program and showed him the handwritten line. Why is Helena's name on my mother's death certificate? Helena explained before Camille could invent anything. Denise died at Whitlock Medical Friday night. Someone entered my name into the system, then attached Denise's fingerprints to the file. On paper, I died again. Denise was listed as an unidentified visitor. Rochelle felt sick. They tried to bury my mother without her own name. And erase me permanently, Helena said. Nolan looked at Camille with quiet disbelief. You knew my sister was alive. I knew your father had arranged long-term care. Behind a locked floor under a false name? She was unstable. Helena's jaw tightened. I was 19 when I discovered Camille's father was billing the company for patients who did not exist. He had me declared delusional before I could testify. Rochelle remembered her mother's warning. I found the list they buried. The list was fake patients. Not only patients, Helena said. Domestic workers, cleaners, and agency staff. Their names were used to create medical claims. If they complained, Camille threatened their wages, housing references, or immigration paperwork. The words landed heavily among the staff listening nearby. Mrs. Bell, the cook, stepped forward. My husband's name appeared on a surgery bill after he died. A houseman said, they deducted insurance from my wages, but the clinic said I was never covered. Camille pointed at Rochelle. She planned this performance because I disciplined her this morning. Nolan looked at Rochelle. What happened this morning? Rochelle hesitated. Camille smiled faintly, reminding her of the threat against her brother's medicine. Nolan noticed. What did she threaten? Rochelle removed her employee card and placed it on the cart. She said if I attended my mother's funeral, she would call it job abandonment, withhold my wages, cancel my health coverage, and ruin the reference for my apartment. The corridor went silent. Nolan looked at Camille. You told me Rochelle chose to work. She needs the hours. My mother was being buried while I served lunch beneath a banner about worker dignity, Rochelle said. I did not choose that. Several donors lowered their eyes. Helena reached into the cart and removed a folder Denise had hidden beneath the mattress. Inside were copies of insurance claims, staff schedules, and death certificates. Every claim had been approved through Camille's scholarship foundation. Nolan turned to security. Call the police and freeze every foundation account. The head guard checked his phone. No signal, sir. Camille smiled. The house network is under emergency control. A scream came from the conservatory. They ran back to the luncheon. One donor lay unconscious beside Rochelle's abandoned serving tray. A bottle of prescription sedative rested inside her service pocket. Camille faced the room with tears already forming. She drugged him. Rochelle stared at the bottle she had never seen. Nolan picked it up carefully. The label carried Denise Avery's name. Camille whispered, "Your mother stole medication from Whitlock Medical. You used it to silence a donor before he could expose your blackmail." Rochelle looked at the unconscious man. She recognized him from the photograph beside Nolan, Denise, and Helena. "He isn't a donor," she said. Helena went pale. "That is Dr. Kent. He signed my false death certificate." Dr. Kent's eyes opened. He grabbed Nolan's sleeve and forced out 4 words before collapsing again. Camille killed Denise herself. Camille ran for the ballroom doors, but Helena blocked her. A dark stain marked Camille's cuff. Rochelle recognized the scent, lilies, the same funeral home preservative on Denise's coat. Then the house speakers announced a message scheduled by Denise. The house speakers crackled above the conservatory. Then Denise Avery's voice filled the mansion. "If you are hearing this, I did not make it home." Rochelle stopped beside the unconscious Dr. Kent. Denise continued. "Camille Hart will try to blame my daughter. She will use medication carrying my name because she believes poor women can be discredited with 1 bottle and 1 uniform." Nolan looked at her. "You knew this message existed." "I knew Denise had been making threats. She was leaving evidence," Rochelle said. The recording continued. "The real list is not in room 418. It is hidden where the women waited after night shifts because they could not afford taxis home." "The basement laundry," Rochelle said. Helena nodded. Whitlock Medical kept an overnight laundry room for cleaning staff. Camille moved toward the exit. Nolan blocked her. "You are staying here." Dr. Kent stirred on the carpet. Helena knelt beside him. "Who gave you the sedative?" He looked at Camille. "She did." Camille shook her head. "He is confused." Kent lifted one trembling finger. "She ordered me to change Denise's death record and prepare another certificate for Helena." Nolan crouched. "Did Camille kill Denise?" "She pushed her against a medicine cabinet." Denise struck her head. "She was alive when Camille called me." Rochelle's hands went cold. "What happened next?" "I was told to list Helena as deceased and Denise as an unidentified trespasser. Camille said no one would question a black cleaner found after hours." Rochelle stepped toward Camille. My mother was alive. It was an accident. You left her there. I panicked. You changed records, planted medication, threatened my brother, and forced me to serve lunch during her funeral. Camille looked toward Nolan. I was protecting the foundation. No, he said. You were protecting yourself. Denise's final message played. Rochelle, do not go downstairs alone. Find the woman who always paid for the last train ticket. The recording ended. Mrs. Green, Rochelle whispered. Nolan asked, who is she? Lillian Green, the former laundry supervisor. My mother visited her every Sunday. Camille's eyes shifted toward the service entrance. Rochelle noticed. You know where she is. I have never met her. Then why did you look toward the old staff apartments? Nolan ordered security to search them. The guards hesitated. Rochelle remembered Camille's control over payroll and housing. They still answer to her. Nolan faced the head guard. Do you? The man lowered his eyes. Miss Hart controls housing for half the team. Rochelle addressed them. My mother died because everyone believed losing a job was worse than helping someone in danger. How many more people must she own before one of you says no? A younger guard removed his earpiece. I'll take you downstairs. 2 others followed. Camille shouted, you are fired. The guard looked back. Then put it in writing. They crossed the kitchen and entered the service corridor. Helena stayed with Kent while Nolan, Rochelle, and the guards descended. At the far wall, an elderly black woman was tied to a wheelchair. Mrs. Green. Rochelle rushed forward. The guards cut the ropes. Lillian gripped Rochelle's hands. Your mother knew they were coming. Where is the list? Lillian pointed toward a laundry scale. Under it. Nolan moved the scale aside. Beneath it was a sealed compartment containing a ledger, a memory card, and dozens of staff identification photographs. Rochelle opened the ledger. Each page listed a domestic worker beside a medical procedure she had never received. Some were billed for surgeries while working full shifts. Others were declared disabled after quitting. Several dead women's identities had been used for years. The final page carried Rochelle's name. Scheduled procedure, emergency psychiatric detention. Date, today. Nolan read it over her shoulder. She planned to have you committed after the luncheon. Lillian nodded. Denise found the order Friday night. She went upstairs to copy Camille's files. Rochelle inserted the memory card into Nolan's tablet. A video showed Camille inside the records room, arguing with Denise. You have been billing workers who never entered this hospital, Denise said. They are numbers, Camille replied. Numbers do not complain. My daughter works in your house. Then stay silent if you want her employed. Denise held up a folder. I already sent copies. Camille lunged. Denise fell against the cabinet. She was still moving when Dr. Kent entered. Camille said, use Helena's file. Make this woman disappear. The video ended. Nolan copied it onto 3 drives. We send this to police, regulators, and every reporter upstairs. A guard checked his phone. The network is blocked. Lillian pointed toward the laundry's old landline. It connects directly to the city fire desk. Rochelle lifted the receiver. No dial tone. Camille's voice came through the intercom. You should have taken the apartment reference and buried your mother quietly. Metal shutters dropped over both exits. Steam burst from the dryers. The temperature climbed. Camille appeared behind the observation window. She held Rochelle's younger brother, Isaiah, by the arm. You went to his school. Camille raised his insulin pouch. You wanted your health coverage protected. Now you understand why paperwork matters. Nolan shouted, let him go. Bring me the ledger and memory card. Isaiah's glucose monitor sounded. Rochelle looked at the compartment, then at the steam pipes. Her mother's clue mattered. Lillian knew every emergency route. How did night staff leave when the doors were locked? Rochelle asked. Lillian pointed toward a linen press. Freight chute. It opens behind the ambulance bay. Nolan began moving it. Camille saw him. If anyone enters that chute, Isaiah gets no insulin. Rochelle lifted the memory card. Bring him down. I will exchange it face to face. You think I am foolish? You need my fingerprints on the ledger. You plan to say I stole records, drugged Kent, and killed my mother when she tried to stop me. Camille hesitated. Without my prints, your frame is incomplete. The observation room door opened. Camille pushed Isaiah down the stairs and followed with his insulin. Nolan whispered, "What are you doing?" "Giving her what she thinks she needs." Rochelle slid the real card into her sleeve and picked up an empty one from the floor. "Insulin first." Camille tossed the pouch. Nolan caught it and gave it to Isaiah. Rochelle offered the false card. Camille reached for it. Lillian pressed the dryer's emergency release. Cold water poured from the fire pipes. Camille grabbed Rochelle's wrist. The empty card fell. She saw the real one taped beneath Rochelle's funeral program and tore it away. Behind Denise's photograph was one final line. "The scholarship dinner is being recorded." Camille looked toward the ceiling cameras. Their red lights were blinking. Nolan had restored the external feed before entering the basement. Police sirens rose outside. Camille seized Isaiah and pulled a blade from her sleeve. "If I fall, your family falls with me." Lillian looked toward the observation window. "No," she whispered. "Her father is here." A man in a Whitlock Medical coat stepped into view. Nolan recognized him. "My father." Charles Whitlock, declared dead 9 years earlier, raised a pistol toward the laundry. Rochelle understood at last. Camille had never created the scheme. She had been protecting the man who did. Charles Whitlock raised the pistol through the observation window. "Step away from Camille." Nolan stared at the father he had buried 9 years earlier. "You are alive." Charles smiled. "Legally, no." That made business easier. Rochelle kept her eyes on Isaiah. Camille's blade remained against his side, but her hand was shaking. "Your father used dead patients and workers to hide money," Rochelle said to Nolan. "Then he used his own death to disappear from every investigation." Charles aimed at her. Denise understood too much. The words confirmed what Rochelle needed. "You ordered Camille to kill my mother." Camille looked toward the window. "No. He told me to retrieve the ledger." Denise fell. "And you left her alive on the floor." Camille's jaw tightened. Charles interrupted. "Do not explain yourself to a maid." Camille flinched. Rochelle noticed it. 4 years, Charles had controlled her with the same method Camille used on employees: money, fear, housing, reputation, and the threat of abandonment. Police sirens grew louder outside, but Charles remained calm. The building's lower level is registered as a medical quarantine zone. Officers will require authorization before entering. Nolan took one slow step toward Isaiah. Charles fired. The bullet struck the laundry scale. Everyone froze. "The next one reaches the boy," Charles said. Rochelle looked at the ceiling camera. Its red light still blinked. "You know this is being recorded." "I know the internal system belongs to me." Nolan answered, "Not anymore. I restored the external donor feed before we came downstairs." For the first time, Charles looked uncertain. Upstairs, 80 guests, reporters, and foundation trustees were watching the laundry room live. Rochelle raised her voice. "Charles Whitlock, did you order the use of domestic workers' identities for fraudulent medical claims?" He laughed. "Workers sold access to their records when they accepted company insurance. That is not consent. It is how institutions survive." And Denise Avery? She should have accepted that one cleaner could not change a system. Rochelle's grief sharpened into focus. "My mother changed it the moment she made you speak." Charles realized too late that every word had gone to the feed. He struck the control beside the window. The cameras went dark. But the recording had already been transmitted. Camille tightened her hold on Isaiah. "Father, give me a car and clear the west gate." Charles looked at her as if she were an employee asking for overtime. "You are staying. You promised we would leave together. I promised you would be protected if you followed instructions." Nolan understood. He planned to blame everything on you. Camille's face emptied. Charles continued aiming at Rochelle. The foundation is in her name. The altered records carry her authorization. Denise died during her confrontation with Camille. I am officially dead. Camille whispered, you said I was building our future. You were preserving mine. Isaiah's glucose monitor sounded. Rochelle spoke gently. Camille, let him go. Whatever happens next, holding a boy will not save you. Camille looked at the insulin pouch in Nolan's hand, then at Charles. Would you shoot me too? Charles did not answer. She lowered the blade. Isaiah ran to Rochelle. Charles fired. Camille shoved Rochelle aside, and the bullet struck the metal dryer behind them. Nolan pulled Isaiah behind the linen press while Lillian opened the freight chute. Get him outside, Rochelle said. Lillian guided Isaiah into the chute with the insulin. Charles left the observation room and entered the laundry through the side door. He kept the gun on Camille. You have made yourself useless. Camille stepped backward. You made me cruel because cruelty kept you pleased. No. You were cruel because you enjoyed authority. She had no answer. Rochelle would not allow Camille to turn herself into another victim. Fear explained some choices, it did not erase them. Charles reached for the ledger. Rochelle slid it across the wet floor toward the open freight chute. He lunged after it. Nolan struck his wrist with the steel insulin case. The pistol fell into the water. Charles tackled him against a dryer. Camille reached for the weapon. Rochelle stepped on her wrist. You do not get to control the ending. Camille released it. Charles grabbed Nolan by the throat. Nolan had spent years behind desks, while Charles had prepared for this moment. He forced Nolan toward the steam pipe. Rochelle pulled the emergency lever Lillian had shown her. The industrial dryers reversed. A heavy linen cart rolled down its tilted track and struck Charles behind the knees. He fell. Nolan pinned him until police broke through the service door. Charles Whitlock was arrested in front of the workers whose identities he had treated as disposable. Camille surrendered the blade and requested a lawyer. The evidence spread far beyond one death. Investigators found hundreds of false insurance claims, secret detention orders, stolen wages, and shell companies funded through the Scholarship Foundation. Several hospital administrators and public officials were charged. Dr. Kent survived and testified that Denise was still breathing when Charles ordered her records changed. Medical evidence proved delayed treatment caused her death. Camille pleaded guilty to unlawful confinement, evidence tampering, fraud, coercion, and assisting the cover-up. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but Rochelle refused requests to forgive her. She was controlled, one reporter said. So were the workers she threatened, Rochelle replied. Only they did not receive mansions for obeying. Nolan resigned from the foundation board while an independent investigation examined his family's wealth. He returned stolen insurance deductions, funded legal claims without requiring silence, and transferred oversight to workers and patient advocates. None of it brought Denise back. 2 days after the arrests, Nolan drove Rochelle and Isaiah to the cemetery. Denise's funeral had been delayed after police secured her body as evidence. This time, Rochelle wore no uniform. Former cleaners, nurses, housekeepers, and drivers filled the chapel. Many carried bills or employment letters Denise had helped them challenge. Nolan stood at the back. He did not speak until Rochelle approached him afterward. My mother missed her own burial because your family erased her name, she said. I know. You cannot repair that with money. I know. She appreciated that he did not ask her to ease his guilt. Rochelle placed the original funeral program on Denise's grave. Inside it, she added a new line. Denise Avery, beloved mother, worker, and witness who refused to disappear. Months later, Rochelle became director of a worker protection clinic created from recovered funds. Lillian joined its advisory board. Helena testified publicly and began rebuilding a life outside room 418. Isaiah's medical coverage was placed under an independent trust that no employer could threaten. Nolan visited the clinic when invited. One evening, he brought 2 coffees and waited by reception. Is this business? Rochelle asked. No. Gratitude? No. She studied him. Then one coffee. They sat without making promises. Camille had believed refusing 1 day of bereavement leave would remind Rochelle how powerless she was. Instead, that cruelty exposed a death certificate, a living sister, a stolen insurance scheme, and the man hiding behind his own grave. Rochelle had missed her mother's funeral once because a wealthy woman threatened her survival. She never missed another chance to speak Denise's name.